Welcome to another Grade 1 preview, the QE2, the Queen Elizabeth Cup at Keeneland. Scott Shapiro joining myself, Darin, Zoccali, and of course you can catch Scott all meet long at TwinSpires.com and on the app with his expert pick selections for Keeneland. Been an interesting start to the meet. Scott, how's things been working out so far?
Pretty good there. Nothing crazy, but grinding away. Have had a couple of good winners, some couple of chalk winners, of course. And yeah, it's been a fun start to the meet. Not quite the same action in terms of high quality stakes competition this week as we saw last week, but that's to be expected. But yeah, the Queen Elizabeth, the 2 Challenge Cup didn't come up as strong as it has in past years, but always a fun race to dive into.
It is, and we actually did give out a Stone Cold Exacta last week in the Breeders' Futurity, although I will concede, I think your selection of Loggins was probably the best horse on that day.
I would agree, but both ran well. Forte came with a strong late run. Loggins, a very good-looking colt for Brad Cox, a promising future for that one, but both of them ran well in that spot.
Yep, 2 definite juveniles with upside. Let's dive into today's race, the Grade 1 Queen Elizabeth II Cup 3-year-old fillies. Race came up, I don't want to call it light because there are a couple of talented fillies in here, but at this time of year, you would expect this to be almost an overflow field, one of the last chances to race for this kind of money for the 3-year-old fillies restricted on turf.
Without question, a Grade 1. And then, you know, we were talking a little bit offline about this. These 3-year-old filly 2-turn turf races, stakes quality, usually come up, like you said, with oversubscribed fields, very tough, challenging analytical puzzles. And like you said, there's a couple of very talented 3-year-old fillies in here, but not as deep as you would have expected, especially this time of year, last shot at a stakes event for the 3-year-olds.
Let's start the conversation with McCulloch for Chad Brown. This filly obviously was tremendous winning the Grade 1 Belmont Oaks earlier on in the summer. I guess you could say she disappointed slightly, finishing second to With the Moonlight, then up at Saratoga, but then rebounded nicely with a Grade 3 win just about a month ago in the Jockey Club Oaks Invitational. She's had a tremendous campaign on paper, on form, on speed figures. She's probably the one to beat.
Yeah, and Chad Brown, who's won this race 4 times, including last year with Shanna Sara, obviously always capable of winning this race. He has McCulloch as well as Gino Romantica in here. And yeah, this daughter of Frankel, second in the Regret, second in the Edgewood, 2 races over the Churchill downside. You mentioned the win at Belmont, and I thought she ran fine in the losing to With the Moonlight in the Saratoga Oaks. So she certainly merits respect. But one thing that I think we need to talk about is there's just hardly any early speed signed on. And while she does have some tactical foot, her best races have come from off the pace.
Yeah, that's exactly what was going to be my next point, Scott. The lack of speed in the race is evident here. And trying to map out who's going to be on the front end and looking at some of the pace projectors, I kind of thought that Bella Bell might just kind of fall into the best trip here. She's third race back off the layoff. I don't normally like turf horses coming from Southern California and going east. I'm just of the opinion that for the last 10 to 15 years, the East Coast and Midwest turf courses are just generally better than the Southern California turf horses. But that being said, this is a fine filly. I think she's going to have an advantageous pace scenario just fold right out in front of her. And let's be fair, she did run second to Spenderella last time, who'd be favored against this group. So for me, Bella Bell could prove tough to catch here.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair overall macro assessment of, you know, the last 15 years. But there's some years where the Southern California turf horses are pretty high quality. And I think this year, you know, we look at this field, we don't see any strong 3-year-old fillies outside of Spenderella on the East Coast who shipped out for that Del Mar Oaks. And you said it. I mean, Bella Bell has not been on the lead in any of her races, but they've been running a much quicker early pace. She gets out of the gate well. And Umberto Rispoli, you know, people may or may not be familiar with him in the Kentucky and the Northeast areas of the country. He did come to Kentucky for a short time. He's a very good turf rider. And I just think naturally she's going to be loose on the lead and pretty much under an easy lead. There's really no other speed signed on. The second place effort to Spenderella lost nothing in defeat that day. And the 2 efforts before that, including the win in the San Clemente, were very impressive. She's not a horse that needs the lead, but if she gets it, she's going to be tough to run down.
I totally agree, and that's why I made her my top selection as well. Let's talk about a couple of others quickly. Gina Romantica, the other Chad Brown runner. She's an interesting filly. Don't normally see Brown become successful with these types after it takes a while to get them to the turf. Normally they go right to the turf and they're good. Now, he did try to put this filly on the turf back in May. She actually won an off-the-turf event, which probably kept her on dirt, running again at Saratoga in July. But then she's moved to the grass and the speed figures just have escalated. Is she up to this level of competition?
I think she's a cut below the top two in here in Bella Bell and McCulloch, but you're going to need somebody to pick up the pieces, and she'll get a good trip from probably mid-pack under Flavian Pratt, who will definitely be cognizant of the lack of early speed signed on and try to get as much forward position as he can. But again, this daughter of Into Mischief finished second, a little bit underwhelming to her stablemate in the Grade 3 Pebbles, and prior to that got a nice win at a big price, but that was against restricted stakes foes. This is a serious step up.
Yeah, the other filly that I think is worth mentioning is New Year's Eve. She's talented enough to talk about. Last spring, or this spring, I should say, she kind of burst on the scene with a big win in the Edgewood where she actually beat McCulloch. Now, she has not gotten back to the winner's circle since then. I do have two distinct concerns here. One, her best race came over the Churchill Downs turf course. We haven't always seen that form play out in some of the more deeper turf courses around the country. And two, she could be completely up against it from a pace standpoint.
Well, I agree with both assessments. The first one, let's talk about real quick in the Edgewood. That was a day where, and a couple days there on Derby week, where being on the far outside on the turf course was a must. Horses that rode the inside, like McCulloch did, were at a distinct disadvantage. New Year's Eve got the right trip that day in the Edgewood and has struggled to get back to that effort. And no doubt she lacks early speed, so it's unlikely she's going to get the same kind of setup that she got in the Edgewood and that she needs to be at her best.
Yep, definitely agree with that point perspective as well. Well, you have two thumbs up here on Bella Bell. We're both landing in that corner, so you have a pretty confident vote from your two handicappers here. And don't forget that race number 9, the QE2 Cup, is a race that includes daily double wagering and all meet long at Keeneland. We have the daily double down. If you hit 2 daily doubles on any card at Keeneland, you then get a 50% bonus on all your daily double winnings that day, up to a $50 cap. That offer goes on each and every day of the Keeneland meet through October the 29th. So be sure to participate with us in that promo, and be sure to watch and wager all of the action at Keeneland on the road to the Breeders' Cup with us at TwinSpires.